Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first meeting of the new council. Could we be all upstanding for the prayer and the acknowledgement of country? Almighty God, we who are gathered together in council pledge ourselves to work in harmony for the welfare and development of our rural city. Guide us, we pray, in our deliberations. Help us to be fair in our judgment and wise in our actions, so that the prosperity and happiness shall be the lot of our people. Amen. Acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land with which we are meeting and pay my respects to both elders past and present. Thank you. Please all be seated. Good evening again and welcome to the first ordinary meeting of the new council term. I welcome councillors, management and staff, and also those members of the public viewing on the live stream online or watching this recording at a later date. As part of our efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and in accordance with Section 395 of the Local Government Act 2020, the council meeting is being live streamed on council's website and is unfortunately not open to the public to attend in person. Hopefully that will change in the future. The audio and video recording will be published on Council's website within 48 hours after the meeting concludes, in accordance with the Chief Health Officer's direction for... In accordance with the Chief Health Officer's direction for regional Victorians to wear masks. All those present tonight will be wearing masks unless a medical exception has been provided. When addressing the meeting, the speaker may choose to take off their mask in order to be clearly heard and understood. Tonight at item 17 we will be considering 4 confidential reports. The live stream will be concluded once council resolves to move into confidential business. This aspect of the recording will not be made available on our website or to the public. So firstly, I'd just like to take a little time to acknowledge a few things that have happened in the last 24 hours. There was a great result for Mildura Rural City Council and the region to receive $10 million to fully fund the Mildura Regional Sporting Precinct, Mildura South Regional Sporting Precinct, always a mouthful. I'd really like to acknowledge the state government, the Andrews government, and the hard work they've done and the hard work and lobbying that Ali Cupper has done. I would also like to acknowledge the original funding of the federal government and the work Anne Webster has put in to help bring the Mildura South Regional Sporting Complex to the point that it is now. And with great sincerity, I'd like to thank all the other councillors in the previous 2 councillors, I believe, who have put their time and effort in. And finally, the staff. This was a deep thought out project, one that's taken a long time to get to this position, and to tick off that $10 million and have it in a single build over quite a bit of time is absolutely phenomenal. So I would really like to thank everybody and the staff for their hard work in the background. Item 3 on the agenda this evening is who's here. We have our CEO, all our staff. We have Councillor Eckel returning for his 6th term, I believe. Councillor De Pieri for his 1st term. Councillor Arnie for his 1st time. Councillor Wood, also 1st time. Councillor Reynolds for her 1st time. Councillor Power for her 1st time. Councillor Milne for his 5th time, I believe. And Councillor Healy for her 2nd. Item 4 on the agenda tonight is apologies and absences. There are no apologies and absences. Item 5 on the agenda is confirmation of minutes. Sorry, I just broke my pen. That's all right, I've got another one. Do I have a mover for the confirmation of minutes? Moved by Councillor Healy. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor De Pieri. Do I have any objections to the motion? There's no objections. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? No one wants to speak. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Carried. Sorry, carried, not thank you. We move to item 5 on the agenda, which is... I've just done that. So we move to item 6 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of council auspice meetings. We have a recommendation that Council note the following records of Council auspice meetings. Arts and Culture Advisory Committee on the 20th of August 2020, the Councillor briefing on the 25th of September 2020, a COVID briefing on the 9th of October 2020, and the Finance Advisory Committee meeting on the 16th of October 2020, and another COVID meeting on the 16th. Can I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Milne. Could I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Arney. Do I have any objectors to that motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. Item 7 on the agenda this evening is a notice of absence. There are no notices of absence. Item 8 on the agenda this evening is the mayoral report. And we don't have a mayoral report, we're just beginning. And follow on item 9 is councillor reports. We don't have reports there either. Item number 10 is responses to councillor questions, and we don't have those. Item 11 on the agenda this evening is questions from councillors. Do I have any questions from councillors? Councillor Reynolds, Councillor Milne, and Councillor Eckel. Councillor Reynolds, could we please have your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Modica. My questions through you, Madam CEO, are: can MRCC investigate the opportunity to have a dialogue with the Mildura Airport to implement or review the noise abatement plan for the airport? That's my first question. My second question is, can MRCC negotiate with MAPL regarding amendment to the URSA or the En route Supplement Australia, identifying the further development of the region's shared airspace? And my final question is, can MRCC implement aspects of the deed of agreement to develop a precinct user group and a residents group to meet with MAPL and MRCC biannually for ease of information exchange? Thank you.
Question to you, Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will refer this question to the General Manager of Corporate Services.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the questions, Councillor Reynolds. So just, I guess in regards to the 3 different items that you've raised there, yes, absolutely, MRCC can have a dialogue with the airport in regards to any matter in regards to the airport, whether it is the noise abatement policy or or anything else for that matter. The airport does present to council on a regular basis through the council forum process, and just sort of noting, I guess, probably jumping to the third point in regards to the agreement there are obligations upon the airport to present and report back to council on a regular basis, whether that's their annual business plan, any other sort of exceptional items, and also their strategy documents. The airport, along with some of the other external entities such as Mildura Regional Development and the City Heart, will be meeting with the new council in December, and I think that would be a very good opportunity for all the new councillors to be briefed by those entities, including the airport, around, I guess, their current business plans and some of the current issues that might be out there as well. In regards to the URSA, I'm not able to comment on that. That is way outside my technical depth, and is a question that I'll pass on to the airport, and they can present back to council on that matter. I hope that summarises and addresses each of those questions.
Thank you, General Manager Corporate. Councillor Milne, I believe you have some questions. Thank you, through to the CEO.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. My first question, I guess these will all go to Madam CEO. There's a problem with our river tracks, in particular four-wheel drives using the roads in wet weather, which results in the destruction of the tracks. Can we address this problem along the lines of what Campaspe Shire has done with their local law, number 8 general? And that, I've got a copy of that I can table later, and that's around fines and, when gates are shut and all that, to actually keep the four-wheel drives off of the river tracks.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I will just see whether the General Manager of Development has anything to add, but otherwise we may need to take this one on notice, but I will just refer to the General Manager.
Through you, Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Milne. We can certainly have a look at that.
Thank you. The next one is I wish to raise a VCAT hearing, which is reference 193 and 1935 of 2018, and that's relating to 730 Sandlong Avenue Limited versus MRCC, which was the 22nd, 23rd of May 2019 and again on the 30th of August 2019. What I would like to know is what was the final outcome of this issue, and can Council be given a presentation on what the issues were that led to this hearing, the final outcome, outlining what in particular changed from the original plan to the final plan, and the time taken to resolve the issue and the cost to Council.
I thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I believe we will need to take that one on notice and provide a separate briefing for councillors.
Thank you very much. Third question, the 6, I'll get through them fairly quick. Can we have some discussion on the future of the Langtree Mall in the near future? In particular, the issue of businesses deserting the precinct and what Council can economically do to get the traffic back into the area before it's totally deserted.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I will ask General Manager of Community to provide an initial response, and then we can continue with a separate conversation.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd imagine we bring that back to forum and further flesh out the ideas, bearing in mind we do have a master plan for that area that Council has endorsed. Might pay to revisit that before the forum.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Happy with that answer. I wish to again raise the Murray Basin Rail project. And yesterday we had the announcement of $50 million funding for the project, which in reality was just funding left over from the original project. Can we write to Jacqueline Symes expressing our concern at the lack of commitment and funding to complete the original scope of the project as originally promised? This project has huge financial implications for our community and needs to be completed to the original scoping, allowing a 24-hour turnaround for a train from Mildura to Melbourne and return.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, certainly we can write again. We have written on a number of occasions with regard to the importance of this project. We will write again with regard to it, and we may also determine if there's any other advocacy through the groups that we're involved in that we can follow up.
Thank you. Next question is, harvest labour is a major issue for our farmers. And can we have this issue raised in the next forum, because I think it needs to be raised fairly quickly. In particular, the idea of offering illegal workers a path to citizenship via seasonal work. This idea has been floated previously and may be the only hope that we have for this year's harvest, given that backpackers aren't allowed into the country and we know there's somewhere near 10,000 illegal workers, and if there was some road to make those workers legitimate, that may actually save our farmers' crops this year.
Through you, Madam CEO.
Apologies, everybody. I forgot to turn my microphone on. Thought I had. We can certainly facilitate a conversation. I must note that the forum is already oversubscribed for December, but just to advise Council that we have advocated for a number of different pathways for harvest workers over time. I may also see if the General Manager Development has any other updates, because there's been a number of conversations ongoing about that matter.
Through you, Mayor, we are on a number of groups actually discussing these issues as we speak, and so they're trying to be tackled at other levels of government. We're involved in those discussions, and we can certainly, as part of coming back back to forum, update you on those discussions.
Yeah, happy with that, thank you. The last one is, can we please have an accurate indication of the final cost of the Mildura South Sporting Complex, including construction, internal, external roads, drainage, curbing and any other associated works, and also an operational budget outlining all running costs, including depreciation, and what the impact is going to be on the 21-22 budget, which I think we need to know fairly soon because we'll be working on that budget early in the year.
Through you, Madam CEO.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I will ask the General Manager of Community to provide an update. As you would appreciate, we have previously advised of the budget costings for Mildura South, but given the changed circumstances with stage 2, we'll also need to consider that. However, I'll ask Mr Hawson to provide further information.
And that's also the running costs, so that'll be an impact on the budget as well, please. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The running costs obviously are as per the original business case, and I don't think there's that much variation from what's previously been supplied to Council. Obviously, as the model is fleshed out and we further appoint staff and so forth, that will become more available to councillors. The other question was in regard to the total budget. Obviously, with the injection of the additional funding, that will need to be worked through, but ideally that's another 10 million on the budget that's already been presented to Council and is reported to every month at the forum.
Thank you, Mr Hawson. Thank you for the questions, Councillor Milne. Councillor Eckel.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and well done with your first meeting, Mr Mayor. Looking forward to a wonderful year. Mr Mayor, the first question, I only have 2 questions and I'll ask them independently through you. Some years ago, Council had a litter control officer in the community and the cost was supported by the government grant to a certain extent, I believe. Could I raise this as a draft budget item for discussion during the 21-22 budget, please?
Madam CEO.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Again, I might ask the General Manager Development to provide some additional context on this one, but certainly through the budget process there will be an opportunity for a number of new initiatives and we will note that one. But over to the General Manager.
Through you, Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Eckel. Yes, we're about to, as you know, put our litter strategy out for community comment, and that the topic you're talking about is canvassed in that, and it does refer to that role. And yes, we did have a role going back a number of years. It was funded by state government. So we will put the strategy out there and get that back, and usually budget follows strategy. So that can then form part of the discussions for the upcoming budget.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The next question, Mr Mayor, I've had a genuine inquiry from the community members, and one in particular, excuse me, about Council considering a publicly built honour board possibly somewhere on the riverfront in recognition of the Citizens of the Year. I thought it was quite a reasonable request, and with the village centre, even a consideration may be in that vicinity.
Madam CEO.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. The suggestion has been raised indeed about a place of recognition for those who are community leaders who have been recognised, and Mr Sexton will be providing some options at the next forum for discussion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did forget to mention that if you look at the riverfront of Port Lincoln, apparently there's a good one there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eckel. I'll just, for courtesy, I'll ask, are there any other councillors that have any more questions? Councillor Healy?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I concur with Councillor Eckel congratulating you on your first meeting, and congratulations to all the new councillors here tonight. Looking forward to working with you all. One issue that I brought up is improving community engagement, and I would like to explore the option of having a community forum so the community can come in and present to the councillors. I know we have a very full itinerary. Perhaps it could be every 2 months. And one of the first guests I would like invited is Oyen Inc. to talk to the councillors about the intermodal project.
Through you, Madam CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. As councillors are aware, we are going through a process as we speak of revising our community engagement policy and guidelines and practices. And so certainly there are a number of changes we'd anticipate happening as a result of that, including deliberative engagement on a number of key legislative obligations that Council has. We can certainly take on board to have a look at how we introduce more general conversations with community into the forum, although I suspect it will be in a different forum than the current forum, which has a purpose specifically about briefing and preparation for council meetings. But nevertheless, if we can come back to you as part of our exploration of community engagement, looking at all of those options with regard to the community, to the intermodal from Oyen Inc. specifically, we'll follow that up, and regardless of the other, we'll try and find an opportunity for a discussion for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all the questions. We move to item 12 on the agenda this evening, which is notices of motion, and there are none. We move to item 13 on the agenda this evening, which is petitions, joint letters and deputations, and there are none. Item 14 this evening is management reports, and then at 14.1 we move now to the agenda item 14.1, Councillors' expense reports from the 1st of July 2020 to the 30th of September 2020. Do I have a mover for that motion? Do I have a seconder? Is there anybody who would like to speak against that motion? Oh, sorry. Councillor Milne moved and Councillor Eckel seconded. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. We move now to agenda item number 14.2, the Mildura Planning Scheme Amendment C109 mild, with a recommendation at item 2 that Council adopt Amendment C109 mild as exhibited and forward to the Minister for Planning requesting approval. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Eckel. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Healy. Does anyone want to speak against that motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We now move to agenda item 14.3, Community Project Grant Program 2020-2021.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on both 14.3, I think 14.4, 14.5, all the community grants. They're either SRS or MASP have put in for grants in all three of them. I'm on the board of both. Whatever is official.
Thank you, Councillor Milne, and we'll get you back in and let you know how these unfold. Thank you. Councillor Arnie. Is your microphone on, Councillor Arnie? Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest with regards to a community grant and an amount that's payable to Mildura Co-op Landcare group, of which I am the president.
Thank you for informing us. We'll have to get the correct paperwork from Mr. Sexton, and we will invite you back in when the recommendation is voted on. So we'll go back to the item 14.3, which is a community program grant for 2020-21, with a recommendation at item 2 that Council approve the following grant applications totalling $95,748 for funding through the Community Project Grant Program 2020-21 as presented in the table below. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Healy. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Power. Does anyone want to object to speak against this motion? I would now like to put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. The motion is carried. Could you retrieve Councillor Arnie, please, Mr. Sexton? Thank you, Councillor Arnie. The motion was carried. We now move to agenda item 14.4, Environmental Project Grant Program 2020-2021, with a recommendation at item 2 that Council approve the following grant applications totalling $27,601. Sorry, Councillor Arnie, do you have another conflict of interest?
This time I have 3, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I don't know whether that's better or worse in that scenario, Councillor Arnie.
Thank you.
No worries. Councillor Reynolds.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if I have a conflict of interest here. I was a member of the Sunraysia Sustainability Network, but resigned when I became a councillor, but I think that still puts me in conflict. So,
Mr. Sexton, would you like to comment on that? Oh, one second, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Reynolds, there could be a perceived general understanding of that, but it's up to you to make the call on whether you think there's a conflict or not. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. We're depleting at 1,000,000 miles an hour here, so there mightn't be anyone left on the first night. So we'll just proceed at item number 2. The recommendation is that we approve the following grant application totalling $27,601.72 for funding through the Environmental Project Grant Program 2020-2021 as presented in the table below. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Eckel, as seconder. Councillor Power. Does anyone want to object to that motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. The motion is carried.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a quick comment on...
Yes, you can, Mr. Councillor
I was going to do it to the previous one as well, but I'll do it collectively because it's all to do with the community. I think these are just so important at this particular time with COVID-19 and the issue of getting the community active and out there doing things. And I just like to congratulate all these groups for the wonderful work and the contribution that they make to our community, and particularly under these trying times. So congratulations to all those that have received grants, but and hopefully any other groups out there that may feel that that they would like a grant from council. It's very, very important. Our officers are always available to take them through the policy and take them through the application process. So I'd implore them to come forward. But congratulations to our community. Just a wonderful community.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Eckel.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to speak to 14.4.
Happy for you to do that, Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I particularly wanted to talk to item 14.4 and commend the community groups doing so much wonderful work in the area of sustainability and looking after the environment, and draw particular attention to kindergarten and school groups. And I'm heartened and buoyed by the fact that we're starting young with looking into things like mulching, vegetable gardens, solar panels, etc. So congratulations to all those groups who've received project funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Could we invite everyone back in who can come in, Mr Sexton? Thank you. Just to inform you, Councillor Arney and Councillor Reynolds, the motion was carried. That was recommended. We now move to agenda item 14.5, Recreation Grants, Program 2020-2021. The recommendation at item 2 that Council approve the following grant applications totalling $110,775.44 for funding through the Recreation Grants Program 2020-2021, the August round, as presented in the table below. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor De Pieri.
I'm a councillor on wheels, training wheels. Is this the point to ask a question, a clarification, or later?
I have to get a mover and seconder first, and then I'll let you allow the question. I'll call for a mover for this motion, Councillor De Pieri. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds. You could please ask your question now, Councillor De Pieri.
I refer to the item in relation to the feasibility study for a synthetic athletics track. I want to state from the outset, I have nothing against it, and Little Athletics is beautiful. I just don't have a context for a feasibility study of $11,000. Well, can somebody provide a context why the feasibility for a synthetic will be so expensive? It's sort of, I reckon, no, I'll limit my comment to that. I've got nothing against it, just need to understand context.
Through to you, General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. This is about a whole redevelopment of the Little Astley track at the Aerodrome Ovals, so it does require a fair bit of detailed work. The idea is that they do this work, which will then enable them to apply for funding through SRV or one of the government grants down the track. There is a requirement for them to be eligible for the funding to have a detailed assessment and feasibility study. They're also contributing to the process, so it is actually more than the $11,000 to do this work. Unfortunately, to get projects to a point of delivery and to be eligible and have a good shot at the funding, this is the level of detail and work that needs to be done.
I have a further question there.
Yes, happy to take the question through me. Yep.
Yes. Do we have the capability ourselves in this institution to help with something like that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're actually helping them with the work. However, to do the detailed work that's required, it's a specialist in nature, and we'd have to work with them to procure it. So we don't necessarily have that on hand. We don't build many athletics tracks. This track is a synthetic track, so it's a specialist, obviously a specialist requirement, and we'd have to bring those people in to help us develop that concept.
Thank you, Mr. Horson. Thank you, Mr. De Pieri. We had a mover with Councillor De Pieri, and we had a seconder with Councillor Reynolds. Does anyone want to object to this motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. Thank you. If you grab Councillor Milne back. Just to inform you, Councillor Milne, that item number 14.2, 14.4 and 14.5 were all carried. Sorry, I'll start again. I didn't turn my mic on. I think this might happen on the odd occasion. And we'll now move to item agenda 14.6, the Mildura Rural City Council Annual Report 2019-2020, with a recommendation at item 2 that Council note the Annual Report 2019-2020 as presented. Do I have a mover for that?
With the correction.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Healy, moved by Councillor Eckel. The correction, Councillor Eckel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this thing's gone, I knew I'd get into drama somewhere along the line. I'm on wheels too with this new development. Mr. Mayor, in the report somewhere under my reference to Councillor Eckel, it does show the breakup of terms that I've served as a councillor, but it shows, but it does state 4 terms, and it's supposed to be 5 terms. Thank you. So I'd like that corrected.
Through you, Madam CEO, could we have that looked at, if that's okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may just refer to the General Manager of Corporate to provide an update on the status of the annual report and our capacity to provide a correction.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Eckel, for that correction. In regards to what we'd class as a minor typographical error to the document, we can make that change. One of the challenges is that the document, and particularly the financials and performance statement and so on, have been audited and signed off by the Auditor Generals, but as we're not making any change to that, that's perfectly okay. A minor typographical error is we can correct. It's probably also just important for councillors, and particularly new councillors, to know that we have certain timeframes that we need to meet with the Minister and the State Government and the Auditor General for preparation of these documents. So therefore there may potentially be some items that have occurred sort of mid-year or later in the previous council's term that might not have made it into that particular annual report. It's not saying that we don't recognise those items, but we do have some fairly strict timeframes. So there's certainly other opportunities through our marketing communications team to also make the community aware of any other particular projects that may have occurred since that report was produced. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make one further comment, please.
Quickly, Councillor Eckel.
I don't want it to be a cost on council if there's a correction to be made, just whatever. Yeah, okay. Don't want new publications of books or anything. No, thank you.
Councillor Milne.
Mr Mayor, I might be able to put Councillor Eckel at ease. It's actually on page 138 and it lists his terms, 2000 to 2003, 05 to 08, 08 to 12, 12 to 16, 16 to 20, which is the 5 terms. And it says Councillor Mark Eckel has served on 4 previous councils. Now this is the report for the last council, so that is in fact correct. 4th, and that's his 5th one. So that's an existing council. So I think it might just be in the wording, but I don't think it's saying that he's only served on 4 councils.
Thank you very much, Councillor Milne.
I just have a question though.
Yes, thank you for the clarification and welcome
in
to
the
question.
report, I did note that there, in the staff figures, that there wasn't a comparison with the year before, which I think maybe there should have been.
Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe that we report the staffing figures in relation to how it's required of us in our statutory report, but nevertheless we can take a look at that and see if that's useful for the future.
So I think we've had this item, agenda item 14.6 moved by Councillor Eckel, seconded by Councillor Healy. Does anybody want to object to the motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried.
Mayor Monica, I'd like to speak to the report.
Happy for you to do that, Councillor Healy.
2 things. I note that it's our CEO's first annual report, and I want to congratulate you on that and maybe commiserate you on that you actually arrived on our back step in 2019 and was instantly confronted by reputational damage, drought, and then COVID. So I commend you on the work in the face of a baptism of fire. My second point I want to make is in page 117 of the annual report. There's a reference under the environmental achievements that Council ran a Cloth Nappy 101 online workshop in June 20 for current and expected parents interested in learning about the financial and environmental benefits of cloth nappies. I would once again like to raise that I would like a rebate on cloth nappies seriously looked at by this council to reduce landfill waste even further, and it might even address some of the issues around the red bins. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. We now move to agenda item 14.7, the 2021 Council meeting and Council forum schedule. With the recommendation, item 2, that Council adopt the following schedule of dates for Council forum during 2021, and point 2 of the recommendation is to adopt the following schedule of dates for Council meetings during 2021. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor De Pieri. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Milne. Does anyone want to object to that motion? I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. We now move to agenda item 14.8, the Audit and Risk Committee meeting 3-2020-2021, the minutes summary from the 23rd of September 2020, with the recommendation at item 2 that Council note the confidential minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on that date, the 23rd of September 2020. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Milne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds. Does anyone want to object to that motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. And we now move to agenda item 14.9, the Annual Audit Risk Committee and Self-Assessment Process 2020 Report on Findings, with the recommendation at item 2 that Council, point 1, the report prepared that Council note, point 1 of the recommendation, the report prepared by BDO on the findings of the Annual Audit and Risk Committee self-assessment process for 2020 calendar year, and at point 2 of the recommendation that the Audit and Risk Committee has assessed itself overall to be operating effectively. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Healy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Milne. Does anyone want to object to that motion? I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. We now move to agenda item 14.10, adoption of external private works policy CP 100, with a recommendation at item 2 that Council adopt the updated external private works policy CP 100 as presented. Do I have a mover for that motion? Do I have a seconder? Mover, Councillor De Pieri. I'm falling off the track, Rich. Seconder, Councillor Milne. Would anyone like to object to that motion? I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. Item 14.11, would please note that this has been withdrawn from this meeting for certain reasons and will be represented at the next council meeting in December. So we will delete that and just move through to item 14.12.
Mr Mayor, I have a conflict with 14.12.
Thank you, Councillor Eckel.
The nature of that conflict is my employer has a business relationship with the applicant of this item.
Thank you.
Councillor Mayor Modica, I would like to propose an amendment, an alternative motion.
Yes, Councillor Healy.
All right.
Happy to receive the alternative motion.
Thank you.
Councillor Healy.
I would like to propose a motion, and the reason why I do this is I think the horse is bolted on this particular issue that we have at the 15th Street signage.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. I think we need to have the motion first.
Go.
And you don't get to speak to the motion before you actually
Could we have a point? Thank you, Councillor Milne.
I'll do it after. I'm fine.
I accept that point of order, Councillor Milne. Councillor Healy just outlined the recommendation.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Milne. I appreciate the experience you have. This is my first amendment to a proposal. I propose that we, and all the councillors have a copy of this on their desk, and I propose that we grant the permit for this sign as per the amendments that have gone on beforehand with the proponent and as per the conditions that have been agreed upon over those 13 amendments with the proponent. Do you want me to read it out, or everyone's got a copy of it? It's just actually granting permission to put up the sign subject to all the things that have been agreed upon with the proponent prior.
Councillor Healy has proposed the motion and moved it. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I'm happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, just clarifying a few things there. So the amended motion has become the motion. I've had a mover and I've had a seconder, Councillor Healy and Councillor Milne. Does anyone want to object to this motion? I thought Robert Claridge put his hand up the back, which freaked me out. I would now like to put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. The motion is carried.
And Councillor Monica, I'd like to speak to that motion.
Happy for you to do that, Councillor Healy.
Thank you very much, Mayor Monica. As I said in the beginning, I think this issue has gone too far. The horse has bolted. We have been playing around with our design and development overlay guidelines for 15th Street. And again, I know we've got a lot of work, but I would like that overlay guidelines reviewed, because I would like to see the entrance to our city being far more beautiful than it is. And at the moment there is a lot of signage, etc. But the last time this was looked at was 2008, so I'd like to call for a review of the design overlay, most particularly on 15th Street. Thank you, Mayor Modica.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Now we move to item 15 on the agenda, which is urgent business, and there is no urgent business. We move to item 16 on the agenda, which is community questions, and I believe, Madam CEO, we have a few. I'll let you take over now.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a number of community questions, and just if you can indulge me for just a moment to explain the process. So with the beg your pardon. We need to get Councillor Eckel.
Sorry, we need to retrieve Councillor Eckel. I think he might be having a cup of tea in the coffee room. Councillor Eckel, there was an amendment to the motion to approve the sign, and it was carried in the end. Thank you. Madam CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we do, as I mentioned, have a number of community questions. So just to clarify the process, given that we are not able to have a gallery, community members can submit questions online, and we have 6 today. And just also to let the community know that when Council adopted its new governance rules, we have brought forward the timing. So we asked the community members put their requests in by 4 o'clock the day before the meeting, and that enables us just to have the best chance to have a response prepared. So if possible, we try and respond on the night. These items have come in today, but obviously that's been a new change, so we will still proceed with these questions. So what I'll do, given that we have a number, is I will read out each question and then refer it to the appropriate General Manager or to myself, depending on the topics, in order to provide a response. So I will start with the first question, which is from Mr. Gould, and that question will go to the General Manager Development. And the question is why the Council has not listened to the public with a recent bin survey, which found that a number of ratepayers, over 93% of ratepayers, want a weekly red bin again. So I'll refer to the General Manager Development.
Through you, Mayor, and thanks for the question, Nathan. So I think with this on, what we need to do is provide a more comprehensive written response to Nathan, which we will do, to explain all the factors that culminated in the Council decision to implement the current 3-bin system. But just to touch on a few key points, decision-making at Council needs to take into consideration a number of elements, and one of those elements is absolutely community input and feedback. So as part of introducing the current 3-bin system, Council undertook an extensive program of community engagement and also had data available from a previous trial at Merbeen. There has been more than one poll undertaken by media outlets, and they have actually produced quite different results. But we will be briefing Council, the new Council, on the 3-bin system in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Corporate Manager Development.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So a second question also from Mr. Gould, and I'll refer this to the General Manager of Corporate Services. The question is whether the Council can impose an actual time limit, with some suggestions of the time limit between 8 a.m. in the morning and 9 o'clock at night for the flight school to operate flying sessions. And then Mr. Gould goes on to note the impact on peace and also how that compares to other restrictions which are imposed on the community, such as lawn mowing and so on. So just a question around whether we can consider a time slot to be considered for the school. I'll refer through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager Corporate.
Through the Mayor, thank you for that question, Mr Gould. The airport itself is operated by a separate organisation. Mildura Airport Proprietary Limited is a separate organisation that has its own board and executive structure. The arrangements in regards to the flying school are a commercial arrangement between the flying school and the airport, and council doesn't have any relationship with the flying school. I am aware that the airport does have a noise abatement policy, and I believe that's a public document up on their website, which does have operating hours for the flying school contained within that. But I'm not totally across the detail. As I said, it's operated by the airport. I will, however, refer this question through to them and ask them to make contact with you to see if they can provide any additional information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Parham. Madam CEO.
Thank you. A question again with regard to the airport from Ms Allen, and I again will refer this to the General Manager Corporate. This questions whether the Council could revisit the lease agreement between Council and MAPL to provide for a greater level of accountability and improve communication between Council, the airport users and residents.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question. There's a number of elements to this. As I mentioned earlier this evening in response to Councillor Reynolds' question, the airport does brief Council on a regular basis in regards to its operations and its business plan. It is my understanding that the airport does have a precinct users group and does meet with its tenants and the members of its precinct on a regular basis. But once again, I can refer this through to the airport for their information, and as I mentioned, Council will be provided a briefing by the airport in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you again through you, Mr Mayor. This one is a question that I will respond to, again from Ms Allen. It asks about whether Council can engage an independent organisation to review the Council's Code of Conduct with the aim of providing better guidance to councillors and improve management process for conflicts, and suggests that should include a review of previous conflicts, just with a referral through to matters which were at hand last year with regard to conflict. Ms Allen, thank you for the question. Council is obliged to review its Code of Conduct, and that is a process that we have flagged with the incoming Council will occur in the next 4 months. That process will be done with regard to the Local Government Act requirements when it comes to Code of Conduct and deals specifically with conflict of interest matters. We're not intending at this point to have an independent organisation review that. It will be a matter for Council's consideration, but will be based on guidelines and best practice, and we are part of a number of groups that are looking at the most appropriate way for that to be developed. And as part of that, I would also note that conflicts of interest are still matters, regardless of the Code of Conduct, for individual councillors to determine, but the Code of Conduct will provide processes for the resolution of issues which relate to conflict of interest, which includes referral to external bodies. So we'll continue that work over the next 3 to 4 months. And thank you. If I may continue, a couple more questions on the rundown now. So we have 2 questions which have been received from Mr Chris Brown. These are really more in the line of suggestions for things for us to consider, so we will take these both on notice and provide additional information back to Mr Brown. So the first is about a request for more support for Mildura to have a healthy fitness day down at the riverfront and maybe do more personal training sessions, classes. And the second is with regard to supporting adults with autism and disability with work or an expo for Disability Week. So we won't provide a response to those tonight as their suggestions, but we will follow up separately with Mr Brown.
Thank you, CEO Philpott. I'm messing around with the titles, sorry. At item 17, on the agenda this evening is confidential business with a recommendation that Council resolve to we won't move, we will move into confidential business to deal with the following matters as pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act. And there are 4 items in confidential. 17.1 is a tender award statutory planning and building software solution, contract number 192056. Item 17.2 is a tender award road safety upgrades on St Matteo Avenue, Mildura, contract number 2021/2. 17.3 is tender award Ontario Avenue reconstruction 12th Street to 13th Street, Mildura, contract number 2021/10. And the final confidential item is 17.4, a tender award to supply and delivery of combustible liners in contract. So we're about to drop out now. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd like to thank all the councillors and staff for coming today. It's the beginning of one big, long 4-year wander through generous debate and discussion, and I hope we all will enjoy it. And also oh, sorry, just got off the chain then. Could I have a mover to go into confidential? Councillor Eckel, a seconder, Councillor De Pieri. Does anyone want to object to that motion? I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Sorry, I've just split that up, so I'll just continue and say thank you all very much. Sorry, Councillor Milne. I thought you had your hand up, mate. Please continue. That's all right, mate. And that just noting that the next council meeting in December will be on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, not the 4th because of Christmas. So thanks everybody, and we'll sign off now.